The screen lit up with a cold, sterile glow. Across every public plaza, personal console, and orbital relay station, the transmission pushed through firewalls and state security alike. No one could stop it. No one dared. The Galactic Empire had taken over every signal in every sector, and what it had to say would not be ignored. On a distant moon called Eidolon, 70,000 human colonists stood in ordered rows beneath a flickering sky. They were scientists, teachers, children clutching their parents' hands, elderly survivors of Earth's earliest waves of interstellar expansion. They wore the plain utility fabrics of terraformers and engineers. There were no soldiers among them. Not a single weapon in sight. A voice, deep and static-laced, echoed from the broadcast. By decree of Imperial Order Sigma Vox 9, these insurgents are found guilty of sedition, resistance, and unauthorized expansion. Their sentence is death, to be carried out immediately. The camera panned upward. Suspended in the upper atmosphere were 4 orbital disintegration satellites, each an obsidian shard trailing silver lines of electric light. They rotated slowly, impossibly silent, until each was aligned above a section of the gathered humans. The broadcast cut to a split screen, one side still showing the terrified but defiant faces of the colonists, the other now revealing the Imperial warlord, Zaltor. He stood over 8 feet tall, scaled and plated, his species long used to subjugating through fear. His eyes, black voids, looked straight into the lens. "Let this mark the price of defiance," he said. "Let Earth remember it is but a spark in the void, and sparks." He raised one clawed hand. "Burn out." The beams fired. For columns of crimson light descended from orbit. They were silent for only a fraction of a second before the feed was overwhelmed by the sound. Rushing wind, explosive force, then an eerie silence. Where once there had been colonists, there was now ash. The silence that followed was total. No commentary. No triumphant music. Just the wind rustling over a scorched plain and the metallic hum of departing Imperial drones. And then the screen went dark. On Earth, in New Geneva, the capital of the Terran Union, silence blanketed the planetary command center. Dozens of military and political officials stood rooted to the floor, faces reflecting the pale blue of the now blank broadcast screen. Someone sobbed. A junior aide vomited behind her desk. President Elena Roux stood motionless at the front of the chamber. Her hands were clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white, blood retreating from her fingertips. Beside her stood an older man in a dark, unmarked uniform. No medals, no rank. His face was lined, not with age alone, but with experience. Scars climbed up his neck, barely visible beneath his collar. His eyes didn't blink. They called him Spectre. No one knew his real name anymore. 70,000, someone whispered. Jesus. President Roux turned toward Spectre. "We warned them. We told them Earth was not their enemy. That we only wanted peace. That we wouldn't escalate." Spectre's voice was quiet, steady. They took that as surrender. She looked at him, desperate for another option. He gave her none. She nodded once. "Red directive," she said. A silence fell over the room, even heavier than the one before. Spectre tapped the neural implant behind his left ear. Confirmed. Authorization code. Argent 50. Red directive is active. Across Earth and her colonies, that single signal pulsed through deep military channels. Ones that hadn't been used in over 50 years. Bases buried beneath kilometers of rock came to life. Cryopods released steam. Satellites changed course. Every Terran war protocol drafted since the fall of Luna was engaged. One by one, lights turned green. Beneath the ice shelf of Antarctica, deep in a facility codenamed Bastion, klaxons howled low and mournful. Rows of vertical chambers lit up with soft blue. Within them stood soldiers, dozens of them, motionless, eyes closed, armored suits melding with flesh through intricate cybernetic interfaces. Genetically enhanced, neurally bonded to combat AIs, these were not ordinary soldiers. They were the Ghost Division. Earth's final answer. Spectre descended via maglev tube into Bastion's core, where the mission would begin. Around him, Tech crews darted between prep stations, running final diagnostics and feeding the latest intel into the squad's shared cognition net. In a glass observation room above, engineers observed heart rate data and cranial pressure readings with scientific detachment. For them, this was routine. For Spectre, this was personal. In his quarters, he placed a small metallic chip onto a table. It projected a hologram of a girl, 10 years old, laughing, her smile crooked with a missing tooth. Her school was on Eidolon, he said quietly, mostly to himself. Outside his door, the Marines began to wake. One by one, their eyes opened, glowing with soft amber light. Neural uplinks activated. The Ghost Division didn't talk when they assembled. They didn't need to. A voice crackled in the comms. It was female, synthetic and calm. Spectre, mission route calculated. ETA to Eidolon, 4 postfold, 36 hours. Imperial presence confirmed. Resistance expected. High. Understood, he replied. Prep loadouts. Variant Delta. Delta confirmed. Executing pre-deployment protocols. In the weapons chamber, racks of rifles, Gauss lances, and energy blades descended from overhead. Armor plating fused into exosuits. Each piece sealed with a hiss of compressed air and a pulse of bioconnectivity. Across Earth, civilians were beginning to react. Riots in some cities, morning vigils in others. In an old district of Mars, a street artist painted a mural of the Eidolon massacre. The ash formed outlines of humans disintegrating into the sky. Above them, the words, "We remember." Back in Bastion, the Vengeance, Earth's fastest, most advanced interstellar warship, hummed to life. The launch pad cracked open above it, revealing the night sky. Spectre stood at the helm, his squad behind him, silent and still. "They thought this would break us," he said, his voice a growl. "They thought fear would keep us caged." He looked down at the mission parameters, now streaming across his retinal display. A full map of Eidolon for enemy placements, civilian remains, execution sites. The Empire had not even bothered to cover their tracks. They were wrong. President Rue's face appeared in his neural feed. Just her, alone, now in the dimmed light of the command chamber. "We can't afford a war," she said. "But we can't ignore this." "It's not a war," Spectre answered. "It's justice." "Good luck, Commander." "We don't need luck," he said. "We have memory." The final countdown began. The Vengeance lifted from its dock, its fold core glowing with building energy. Time stretched, bent, snapped, and then they were gone. On Earth, the broadcast was still being dissected. Analysts debated the Empire's intention. Was this a provocation? A message? A mistake? But those who knew better understood. It wasn't a message to Earth. It was a message to the galaxy. That humans were alone. That humans would die alone. But as the stars warped around the departing warship, Spectre thought only of the girl in the hologram. He didn't need analysts. He didn't need strategy. He needed only what every human carried, quietly, even now, even in the void, memory, rage, and the unbreakable resolve to fight back. The darkness of fold space was absolute. No stars, no gravity, no time. Just the hum of the Vengeance's engines vibrating through its titanium alloy spine, steady as a heartbeat. To anyone aboard, it felt like floating in a dream between moments. For Spectre, it was a calculated pause before Vengeance turned into reality. He stood alone on the command deck, armored but helmetless, eyes locked on the semi-transparent display that hung in the air before him. It showed the mission briefing again, updated with new data from reconnaissance drones that had reached Eidolon 6 hours earlier. They confirmed what he already expected. The Empire hadn't just executed the colonists. They'd left a message scorched into the surface of the moon in glyphs visible from orbit. Earth is next. Beneath that message were the ruins, ashes blown across the craters. Charred structures half sunken into blackened soil, the skeletal remains of prefabricated homes and research stations. The orbital satellite cannons had left glassy scars across the surface, proof of power so precise, so arrogant, it made Spectre's jaw lock. "Commander," a voice called from behind. Spectre turned. Sergeant Vex approached, her exosuit half-sealed, helmet under one arm. She was tall, lean, with silver-tinted irises from optical enhancements, and the sharp discipline of someone who'd survived 5 planetary campaigns. Her record was clean, her loyalty unquestioned, but Spectre trusted her for one reason only. She never flinched when others broke. "Squad's fully briefed," she said. "Weapons synced. AI uplinks live. We're just waiting on your go." Spectre nodded. "How's morale?" "Focused," she replied. "And pissed." The rookies saw the broadcast. They were supposed to be locked out. They hacked the feed. Martinez looped the firewall with his neurojack. Spectre didn't smile, but something softened in his voice. "Good." He stepped away from the viewport and joined her at the central command ring. Around them, the Ghost Division readied in silence. Each Marine was deep in final sync with their combat interface, a process of neural calibration that merged thought with motion, instinct with execution. They weren't human in that moment. Not entirely. And yet, everything they carried was human: rage, memory, love, loss. Private Tash, barely 22, checked over his energy pack one last time. He hadn't spoken much since Thaw, but Spectre had read his dossier. Eidolon, for was where his uncle had lived, a terraform architect. Tash had grown up idolizing him. Now he barely blinked, eyes locked on his weapon, movements fluid, automatic. Next to him, Corporal Sika was running a silent diagnostic on her cybernetic limbs. She'd lost both arms in the Battle of Juno and refused prosthetics with human skin. Instead, she chose exposed alloy, gleaming with circuitry. When asked why, she simply said, "So the enemy knows what they took from me." Spectre watched them all and spoke into the squad channel. "Listen up. You've seen the images. You know what they did. This isn't revenge. That would be personal. This is response. This is balance." A chorus of quiet affirmatives echoed in the link, each tone precise and unshaken. He continued, "This is not a siege. We're not here to occupy. The Empire left behind a garrison of Xenomech enforcers, automated war machines programmed for planetary suppression. They're expecting resistance. They're not expecting us. We're going in hard and clean. No survivors." Tash looked up at that. His voice cracked slightly when he asked, "And the civilians? Any chance anyone made it?" Spectre didn't answer immediately. He pulled up the most recent thermal scans. No life signatures. No heat. Just ash and silence. "No," he said finally. "There's no one left." Tash exhaled once, slow and deliberate, and went back to his preparations. The AI voice returned, crisp and clinical. "Exiting fold space in 60 seconds. Warning. Enemy sensor grid likely to detect gravitational displacement on arrival. Recommend high-velocity descent upon exit." Spectre gestured to Vex. "Initiate drop protocol. Manual override. We'll fall dark." She moved to the panel, fingers flying over the controls. Manual drop in progress. Coordinating armor stasis until burn entry. Spectre looked out once more at the artificial void. Soon, Eidolon, for would rise into view, and with it, the first step in a long trail of blood. "Helmet up," he ordered. Armor plates slid into place, forming seamless seals over their faces. His HUD came alive with mission telemetry, squad vitals, and a blinking countdown. 30 seconds. The hum of the ship grew louder, sharper. Tension filled the air like pressure in a deep-sea vessel. No one spoke. They didn't need to. 20 seconds. Spectre's thoughts drifted, just for a moment, to his daughter. Her laugh. The way she used to ask him if the stars ever got tired of shining. He never had the heart to tell her stars died all the time. 10 seconds. The Vengeance cracked out of fold space in a thunderclap of energy. Reality snapped back around it. Stars bloomed. Eidolon, 4 appeared ahead, a dead, gray sphere scarred with fresh burns and shallow craters. "Drop now," Spectre ordered. The ship's undercarriage opened, and one by one, the Ghost Division launched like bullets from the chamber of a gun. No drop pods, just bodies in hardened grav armor, riding momentum and gravity into the moon's atmosphere. The descent was hell. Flames licked across their suits. Alarms blared inside the HUD. Atmospheric friction pounded against their shields. But they had trained for this 1,000 times. Spectre landed first, in the center of what used to be Eidolon's central plaza. Dust and ash exploded upward, his boots carving twin craters in the stone. The others followed, Vex, Sika, Tash, Martinez, and the rest, forming a circle, weapons raised. There were no buildings anymore. Only blackened husks and twisted scaffolds. Pieces of scorched children's playgrounds. A shattered research terminal blinking weakly with static. Spectre scanned the area. Clear perimeter. Get eyes on the garrison. Martinez deployed a swarm of recon drones, each no larger than a fist, humming through the air in a silent network. Within seconds, the terrain lit up on their shared HUD. Zenimax confirmed. Vex reported. 3 clusters. 2 patrols. 1 heavy anchor near the execution grounds. They left them here to mock us, Sika said. No, Spectre replied. They left them because they knew we'd come. He walked toward the largest crater, the epicenter of the first orbital blast. In the center was a piece of charred concrete. On it, etched by plasma fire, was the outline of a child's hand. He knelt beside it, let his fingers rest just beside the mark. We're not ghosts, he said into the private channel only the squad could hear. We're echoes. We carry the sound of what they try to silence. Vex stood beside him, silent. Her weapon was raised, but her expression was somewhere distant, focused inward. She didn't ask what came next. Get ready, Spectre said finally. Night's coming. That's when they patrol. Tash moved to the edge of the ridge, peering out across the desolate plain. In the distance, red eyes flickered, Zenimax scanning the dark. No sound, no emotion, just programming. He whispered to himself, barely audible. Let them come. And far above, in the orbit of a dying moon, the stars watched, cold and ancient. Waiting. The cold crept in fast once the twin suns fell below the ridgeline. Eidolon 4, stripped of atmosphere by the orbital blasts, no longer retained heat. The soil beneath the Ghost Division's boots crystallized, fracturing into jagged splinters as their weight pressed it down. But no one complained. They moved like phantoms between ruins, each step calculated, every movement quiet. The time for fire and fury would come. For now, they hunted. Spectre crouched behind the remnants of what had once been the central energy hub. A mural clung to the wall, blackened and scorched, the image of a Terran child reaching toward a star. Beneath it, 3 Zenimax stalked across a shattered causeway. 8 feet tall, plated in obsidian alloy, their limbs moved with unnatural precision. Half spider, half humanoid, their long sensor arrays sweeping side to side like antennae tuned to death. He lifted a closed fist. The squad froze. In the silent channel, he spoke, triplet patrol. Type 4 Hunter class. Neural mesh active. No mistakes. From behind a collapsed wall, Vex responded, Sika and I flank from east. Martinez covers high ground. You take the middle. Tash's voice entered next. Requesting position inside structure. I can intercept their uplink feed if they ping the grid. Spectre approved with a subtle blink. An input synced to his neural implant. The squad fanned out. The Zenimax paused. One twisted its head toward a mound of debris. For a second, its optics pulsed yellow. Spectre didn't move. He'd once watched a mech like this dismantle a human being in less than 3 seconds, beginning with the skull. These weren't machines. They were statements. The Empire's answer to rebellion was always the same. Overkill, delivered with mechanical elegance. A shimmer to his left. Martinez engaged his stealth field, moving along the exposed roof of a maintenance facility. From above, he had the best view. The moment they crossed into the kill zone, he would begin. The 3 mechs stepped forward in unison. Martinez took the shot. A Gauss bolt split the air, silent and blue-white. It struck the lead mech's cranial unit, detonating it into a flower of sparks and superheated alloy. The other 2 reacted instantly, breaking formation, weapons sprouting from beneath their shoulders. Before either could fire, Sika emerged from the shadows, sprinting low and fast, her arms transforming mid-run. The forearms split into twin blades, each one humming with disruptive energy. She drove them into the second mech's legs, severing the joints at the knee. It collapsed, arms flailing, but not before firing a burst that scorched a deep crater into the wall behind her. The third mech rotated, locked onto her. Too late. Vex came from above, descending in a high-speed arc, her boots slamming into the mech's upper torso. Her rifle fired point-blank into its sensory cluster. Sparks erupted. The mech staggered. Spectre moved in. He crossed the space between them in 4 strides, drew his sidearm, and fired once, right into the access node at the base of its neck. The machine froze, spasmed, then dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. 3 seconds. The battlefield returned to silence. The squad regrouped. Martinez descended from the rooftop, flipping his rifle to standby. Clean shots. No grid alert. Either they're not uplinked or... Tash's voice cut in. Negative. They're uplinked. I intercepted the burst. They didn't call for help. Spectre looked at him. What? Could be suppression protocol. Or it could mean they're not worried about losing 3. Statistically insignificant. Sicko wiped alloy residue from her blades. They think we're nothing. They will, Spectre said, until we become everything. The squad moved forward, deeper into the ghosted remains of Eidolon's infrastructure. Craters marked the landscape like disease, each one a scar left by orbital fire. Bones crumbled beneath dust. Once, a child's shoe, untouched, half-buried. No one spoke when they passed it. Night deepened. Eidolon's orbit brought it into the shadow of its larger planetary neighbor, casting the moon into a half-light filtered by fractured starlight. In the distance, a structure still stood. The execution spire. 12 stories of black metal, untouched by the bombardment. The Empire had built it after the occupation, as both gallows and broadcast relay. It was where they recorded the extermination, where they had spoken to Earth with a voice of death. Spectre stared at it. That's our target. Martinez adjusted the scope of his rifle. Perimeter's hot, reading at least 30 signatures. Mostly Zenimex. Some heavy armor, too. Internal. Hard to tell. They're masking their heat signatures. Could be using null shields. Spectre turned to Tash. Can you disable the outer sensor field? Tash nodded. Give me 90 seconds. Vex took position on an outcropping of broken alloy. What's the play? We go in loud, Spectre said. No more whispers. No more shadows. She frowned. That's not your usual style. It is now. Tash moved to a junction box, one of the few still intact. His fingers danced across the exposed circuits, rerouting flow, injecting override commands. The screen flashed once, twice. Then green. Fields down. Spectre raised his hand. Move. The squad descended toward the spire. Zenimex emerged from the shadows as if triggered by instinct. Their red optics flared, and within seconds, the night lit up with weapons fire. But the Ghost Division had already broken a line. Sicko moved like liquid steel, blades carving arcs through the machines. Vex fired control bursts, each round finding a joint or weak point. Martinez provided overwatch, eliminating threats before they reached the team. And Tash, young, quiet Tash, overloaded a generator core and turned an entire flank into molten slag. Spectre advanced straight through the storm. Rounds glanced off his armor. Explosions rocked the ground beneath his boots. But he moved with purpose, firing only when necessary. Every step aimed at the spire's entrance. A pair of Siege-class Zenimex rose to block the path. Massive, four-arm constructs armed with railguns. He didn't slow. A button tapped on his forearm sent a charge through the ground. An EMP pulse tuned specifically to Imperial AI frequencies. The giant stuttered, froze, then fell to one knee. Vex and Sicko finished them off. The doors to the spire loomed ahead. Reinforced alloy, sealed with biometric encryption. Tash reached them first, panting. Give me a minute. You have 30 seconds. He nodded, set down his kit, and began the override. His fingers blurred, a dance of sparks and code. A low hiss signaled the pressure release. The doors slid open. Inside, silence. Spectre stepped through, his rifle raised. The air was different, colder but electric. Monitors lined the walls, still playing loops of the execution. 70,000 people, over and over. In the center stood a terminal, the broadcast nexus, and behind it a figure, not a mech, a humanoid, armor-clad, tall, imperial. The insignia on his shoulder identified him as Commandant Varus, the regional overseer of Eidolon. Not supposed to be here. He turned slowly, unafraid. I wonder when you'd come. Spectre leveled his weapon. You made this personal. Varus smiled, not with amusement, but something worse, certainty. You think justice is found at the barrel of a gun? He said. But we don't fear your justice. We expect it. We build around it. Spectre stepped forward. Then you built wrong. And fired. Varus dropped, the shot echoing through the spire. Spectre walked to the terminal. His hand hovered over the controls. Broadcast ready. Tash confirmed. He keyed the mic. Earth would see this. This is Spectre. Eidolon is no longer under Imperial control. The ghosts you created remember everything. He paused. And we're coming. The screen went dark, but the galaxy had already started listening. The broadcast echoed across known space within minutes, bouncing between relay satellites and deep void listening posts. For some, it was an act of rebellion. For others, a declaration of war. But for Earth, it was something else entirely. It was a promise kept. Eidolon, for long believed lost, was not only avenged but reclaimed. And Spectre knew the message would reach those who needed it most, the survivors, the defectors, and those still afraid to speak. They would know the ghosts of Eidolon had risen. Within the spire, the silence after the storm was not peace. It was calculation. The team moved quickly. Martinez swept the upper levels, securing vantage points. Sika patrolled the corridors, clearing remaining threats. Tash downloaded the remaining data cores, while Vex stood by Spectre's side at the command terminal, eyes flicking through threat assessments. We've got movement in orbit, she said. Imperial Response Force just folded in. Looks like 3 cruisers and a battle barge. No troop carriers yet. Spectre nodded. They expected a skirmish, not a broadcast. They'll bombard the surface the moment they triangulate us. Then we don't let them. He turned to Tash. Do we have control of the Spire's uplink array? Partial. Tash replied, fingers dancing across his pad. They locked the primary failsafe. I can crack it, but not fast enough to redirect their orbital fire. However, he trailed off. Say it, Spectre ordered. There's an old defense system embedded in the Spire, subsurface. A geothermal weapon platform. Experimental. Designed for planetary denial. Does it still work? Tash shrugged. It hasn't been used since the Outland conflicts. But the readouts are green. If I can interface it with my rig, I could power it up. Spectre met Vex's gaze. Could it take out an orbiting cruiser? Maybe. But even one strike would give us a window to escape. No, Spectre said. We're not running. He turned back to Tash. Bring it online. But don't fire yet. Understood. As Tash disappeared into the lower levels to access the old platform, Spectre paced to the viewing window. Outside, the remains of Eidolon stretched to the horizon, blackened and broken, yet somehow sacred now. A graveyard made holy by fire and vengeance. This place, desecrated by imperial arrogance, had become a symbol. He could feel it pulsing in his veins, demanding more than a tactical victory. Sika's voice came over the squad channel. Found a survivor. Spectre froze. Repeat. 1 civilian. Buried under a collapsed tunnel near the comms relay. Female, mid-40s, severely malnourished. No signs of infection or implants. She's breathing. Get her to the med chamber. Now. When Sika brought the woman in, Spectre watched her face closely. Hollow cheeks, blood-caked forehead, eyes wide and blinking against the light. She looked up at them with disbelief, clutching a cracked pendant, a Terran crescent wrapped around a child's name. My daughter, she whispered. They took her. She was only 7. Vex knelt beside her, voice low. You're safe now. The woman shook her head. No, none of us are. The executions were only the first wave. They're building something. Below, deep underground. Spectre narrowed his eyes. What kind of something? She coughed weakly. A relay gate. Large scale. For reinforcements. Not just from this sector. From the core. The core. Imperial home systems. Untouchable until now. Why build it here? Vex asked. They wanted us to resist, the woman said. They wanted Earth to fight back. So they could justify full-scale invasion. Eidolon was the bait. Spectre stood slowly, mind shifting gears. This wasn't retaliation. It was provocation. The Empire hadn't underestimated Earth. They had planned for Earth's fury. Spectre's broadcast had played directly into their hands. We have to destroy the relay, he said. Tash's voice came through again, slightly distorted from the lower levels. Spectre, the geothermal weapon is primed. But you're going to want to see this. Vex glanced at him. He nodded. Stay with the survivor. Martinez, cover the spire. Sika with me. They descended into the substructure, deeper than the blueprints had suggested existed. The walls here were older, pre-imperial design. More Terran, possibly from the original colonists. As they reached the weapon chamber, Spectre saw it. An immense crystalline core, half submerged in geothermal magma. It pulsed with dormant energy. But Tash wasn't looking at the weapon. He stood before a nearby console, its screen glowing with unfamiliar symbols. It's the relay, Tash said. The one she mentioned. It's not just a gate. It's a hybrid AI construct, designed to open and sustain simultaneous folds across multiple sectors. We're talking dozens of invasion points. Simultaneous arrival. Earth. Earth won't be ready. Spectre stared at the screen. The data showed planetary coordinates. Earth. Mars. Europa. Even off-grid rebel strongholds. Can we destroy it? Tash hesitated. It's tied to the geothermal core. If we fire the weapon at the cruisers, the energy discharge will overload the relay's regulator coils. Chain reaction. But, Spectre asked, I won't have time to get out before the failsafe locks down the chamber. There was no hesitation. I'll do it, Spectre said. Tash spun. No, sir, you don't understand. Once the sequence begins, you'll have 90 seconds. Tops. And the chamber doors are manual. You'll never make it. I wasn't asking for odds. Spectre. He raised a hand. This isn't a choice. You finish the code. I fire the weapon. You get everyone back to the vengeance. You launch. And you make sure the next world knows we never kneel. Tash looked like he might argue, but one look at Spectre ended that. He nodded slowly. Understood. Back in the spire, Spectre met his team one last time. He gave no speech, only looked at each of them in turn. Sika, whose silence was strength. Martinez, always watching from above. Tash, the quiet fury of youth. And Vex, his equal in war and conviction. Take her home, he said, glancing at the survivor. You sure about this? Vex asked. I was sure the moment I saw Eidolon. She reached forward, gripped his shoulder. We'll tell them what you did. Don't, he said. Tell them what we did. And then he turned, walked back into the depths alone. Inside the chamber, the heat rose quickly. The core pulsed. Spectre moved to the control panel, hands steady. On the screen, he saw the orbital cruisers descending, charging weapons. A countdown began. He keyed the final command. Above, on the surface, the spire shook. From orbit, the Imperial fleet saw a beam of white-hot energy erupt from Eidolon's crust, spearing the lead cruiser through its midsection. A moment later, the planet cracked. The relay gate went first, imploding in on itself in a cascade of gravitational collapse. Then the spire. Then the crust. From the edge of the system, the Vengeance watched the moon die, and Earth received the final message, auto-sent through the command terminal just before the blast. Spectre's voice. No graves. No monuments. Just memory. That's all they left us. So we became Memory's blade. And we are not done. The stars, silent witnesses, blinked once more. And the war truly began.